Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me today. Today I have a really easy card with Pawsome stamps, and this is using the stamp set called Deck the Halls. And this is the type of stamp set that never goes out of style because you can dress it up in whatever colors or style that you want. It's just a really good staple, a Christmas stamp set. And you get a whole bunch of ornaments as well as some foliage, sentiments, and also some string, stamp string, I guess you could say, for the ornaments. And I've used an embossing folder from my stash along with a piece of Brussels smooth cardstock. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of ink smushing today. I haven't done it in a while. So I'm taking 2 shades of green. These are Lime Ricky and Garden Party. And just putting those on my mat. And I'm going to take my water bottle and spritz those so that they get nice and wet. And then I'm going to take a piece of leftover stamp packaging so that the ink gets spread onto the stamp packaging, and then I'll go ahead and flip that over onto that embossed background and kind of just smooth it out over those embossed areas. So the ink is mainly going to hit the areas that are embossed. It does get kind of into little tiny areas of the panel that is not embossed, but it's going to stay mainly on those raised areas from the embossing folder. And so I'm just going to go ahead and keep dipping my plastic packaging into the ink until I have that color spread. And then I wanted to add some reds in there to match kind of the pinks and the grays that are on the ornaments. And while I'm doing that, I wanted to mention that Pawsome Stamps has an awesome new release coming out. We will be starting some sneak peeks on the 10th of November. So this week we will be having some sneak peeks over on Instagram. I hope you follow Pawsome Stamps and the design team members over there. That's where we'll be popping up our sneak peeks. It is a really awesome release. You're gonna love it. And that release actually goes live in the shop on the 14th of November. And then the design team will have an Instagram hop on at the beginning of December. So I just wanted to mention that so you can be on the lookout for some new goodies coming your way. Once I have the panel completed with the ink, I'm going to take some shimmer spray and spray that across the panel. And then for the ornaments, I went ahead and fussy cut those, colored those with some Copics, and then I wanted to add a little shimmer to those as well. So I'm going to add some glue with a paintbrush. And using a brush just helps to kind of smooth that glue out so that there aren't lines of glue for more of an even coverage when I add the glitter to the top. The glitter I'm using today is the Rock Candy glitter. It is the Tim Holtz glitter. It's really pretty white, perfect for Christmas glitter. And so I'm going to go ahead and add that to each of the ornaments. And then I'm going to set those aside and let those dry. And then I'm going to mat my card panel onto kind of like a off-white shimmery piece of cardstock. And so I added a little bit of my strongest double-sided adhesive around the edges and then a little bit of liquid glue in the middle. And I'll go ahead and add that to that mat. And I'm just using the paper towel so that none of that shimmer or ink gets on my craft mat. And so I'm just smoothing that over to make sure it's really well adhered. And then I'm taking a super tiny hole punch and I'm just going to be using this to put some really thin thread through. You can use a bigger size hole punch, but I have this and then I have a really big one, and so this one was best suited for these little ornaments. And then I'm just grabbing some silver thread from my stash, and I'm going to attach all of those over the top of the card. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of push those over the top and then adhere those in the back with tape. and each of those will fall in a different area on the card. And then I'm going to add some foam squares to the back of each of the ornaments, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of something to mute the background a little bit so there's not such a contrast between the ornaments and the background. And so what I'm using actually is a piece of tracing paper. And I like using tracing paper because it is a lot thinner than vellum and it lets more of the background show through. So I've cut the vellum down a little bit smaller than my card panel. And then I'm going to take each of the ornaments and just pull it so that it is taut against that piece of tracing paper. And so I'm removing the backing for the foam and adhering that basically to the tracing paper, and this is where I'm going to hide the adhesive to adhere that piece of tracing paper down onto my card panel. So since these ornaments are basically attached to the back of the card with that thread, it's really easy to just flip the vellum over and then get my liquid glue out and add that adhesive right behind where the foam squares are. And then all I have to do is flip that piece of tracing paper back over and kind of pull it down a little bit to make sure it is placed evenly onto that card panel. And I'll lay an acrylic block on that to make sure it adheres really well. And then I've taken a scratched piece of black cardstock and I've rounded the corners on the left-hand side of it, and I'm going to go ahead and add the sentiment. The sentiment is from the stamp set. It just says Merry Christmas. I'm going to do a little bit of white heat embossing, so I've prepped my black paper with an anti-static bag, and then I have inked that up with some watermark ink, and I'm going to cover that with my white embossing powder and then use my heat tool to go ahead and melt that embossing powder. And I wanted that cardstock to fold over the edge, so I'm marking that where I want the score line to be, and I'm just going to put that in my scoreboard and use my bone folder to go ahead and make that really nice crease. And then we'll fold that over and add, I actually add both liquid adhesive and double-sided adhesive just to make sure it stays really secure. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that to the card on that bottom corner, kind of where the tracing paper is lifting up a little bit because it is so thin. And that's going to do it for me today. I hope you check us out over on Instagram later on this week for those sneak peeks of the new release. That is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did like this video or find it informative, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. As always, I thank you so much for taking some time to hang out with me today, and I hope to see you next time.